All right. And we're getting lots of login. Good evening, everyone. We'll get started in just a minute while we let everyone log in. Looks like we're going to have a big crowd tonight. That's great. All right, I'm going to give it a couple more minutes because we've still got people logging in. And I already see a hand. If you have a question, please enter your question into the Q&A. All right, it's 6:02. So since we have a lot of stuff to cover, we're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, welcome to our August Water Wednesday, which is Goodbye Grass, Hello Garden. And tonight we have our experts, Alice Towey, our Manager of Water Conservation, and Jolene Bertetto, who are allowed, because I just forgot her title. So introduce herself. I'm sorry, Jolene.
I'm a water conservation representative here at EBMUD.
Thank you. And we will get started in just a minute. I just want to remind everyone, this episode is being recorded. It will be posted on our YouTube channel by the end of the week. And we are overbooked tonight. So if you log out, you probably won't be able to get back in, but you will be able to watch the recording later. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with Alice.
Thanks so much, Mona. I'm going to share my screen. And I just want to thank everybody, first of all, for joining us this evening. I know you've probably got a lot of things you can do on a Wednesday night, and I love that you're here with us talking about getting rid of your lawn. Mona, does it look good in terms of the screen sharing?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So yeah, my name is Alice Towey. I'm the Manager of Water Conservation here at EBMUD, and we're going to talk today about getting rid of your grass and putting in a beautiful garden. So what's on the agenda for today? I'm going to start off just talking a little bit about where we are in terms of like our water supply and drought and kind of the benefits of water conservation, just to kind of like present a little bit of a context and lay a bit of foundation for why lawn removal projects are so important and why this is something that EBMUD and other agencies and the state are really promoting right now. Then I'm going to turn it over to Jolene, and she's going to talk about the rebates that we have at EBMUD that can help you with your project, and then go into a little bit of the nuts and bolts on some of the tools and techniques, things like sheet mulching, and just some of the basics of putting in a water efficient irrigation system, and some great resources for choosing what plants you want to use in your garden. And at the very end, we're going to have Q&A. We're also going to be sharing a lot of resources throughout. I think we're going to be probably sending a follow-up email that's going to have a lot of links, and we're going to be putting links in the Q&A so that, you know, if you need resources, you'll be able to find them. But like Mona said, if you do have any questions at any point, you know, feel free to enter them into the Q&A, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. So with all that introduction, let's dive in. So I'm going to talk a little bit, first of all, about EBMUD and where we get our water. And some of this you might know already, especially if you've been to one of our other Water Wednesday talks. This is a map that kind of shows our service area and our watershed. We get about 90% of our water from the McCulmey River. We operate 2 reservoirs on that river, Pardee and Comanche. And we operate those conjunctively to meet our needs, to supply downstream water rights, and also to supply water for habitat. The McCulmey River is really important habitat for steelhead and salmon, and so we operate our reservoirs to help, you know, protect those fish habitats. We have about 92 miles of aqueducts that bring that water to our service area. Most years, the McComb River watershed is sufficient for our water supply needs, but during droughts, especially multi-year droughts like the one we're in right now, we do sometimes need additional sources of supply. So you can see that Freeport Regional Water Facility in the middle of the screen with that kind of purple line. That's a project we built in 2010 that has some pumps and intake facilities on the Sacramento River that allows us to take water from the Central Valley project and to do water transfers to help meet our needs during dry years. But of course, conservation is also really important. Now this chart, I know it's a little bit busy, but I'll walk you through it. We all know living in California that our water supplies, our hydrology is extremely variable. So this chart goes back over 100 years to 1895 and shows for each water year what our water supply off the McComb River was like. So you can see in blue, those are years that are kind of like average or normal or above average, you know, kind of wet years. And then you can see in the red below the drought years. And when you kind of do the math and actually look at it, you can see that droughts are getting more severe over time. They're getting more frequent. And this is something that we unfortunately expect with climate change, right? That our water supply is getting more uncertain. So we're going to have more of these droughts to deal with. The good news is that East Bay MUD, we have a plan for dealing with this. It's a plan that's been in place for a number of years. You know, we did this project, our water supply management program back in 2012, where we kind of looked at our demands out into the future and kind of figured out what we would need to do to make sure we had enough water. And you can see there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, right? Like water conservation is a piece of the puzzle. Protecting that McComb River watershed and making sure that we have high quality water there, that's another piece of the puzzle. I mentioned CVPs and water transfers during dry years. Recycle water is very important to us as well. That's taking wastewater, treating it to a high level so that it can be used. And then we also have a lot of new projects we're working on, things like groundwater banking, regional partnerships. We're exploring a partnership with Contra Costa Water District for the expanded Los Vaqueros Reservoir. So those are all very important pieces of making sure that we meet our water supply needs. So with that background, let's talk about this year. This chart shows our average precipitation in the McComb watershed by month. And then the blue shows what we actually got this water year. So you can see it started off great in October. We had that amazing storm. We got like 8 inches of water in the East Bay. We had a really wet December, which was fantastic. And then it stopped. And we were all kind of like scratching our heads. Like in January, we were like, okay, that's fine. January is dry. It's going to be great. It'll be okay. And then February was dry and we were starting to get a little more nervous. And, you know, you see where this is going. So, you know, when you add it all up, this water year was the lowest January through June precipitation on record. And you can see that in this chart. You can see with that red box, that's this year, what precipitation we got in January through June. And it's compared to some of the other droughts that we're all familiar with, right? Like you can see 1976, 1977's in there, 2015, other dry years. And you can see that this year really is exceptionally dry. So in recognition of this, our board has taken a number of actions. In April, you know, we took a look at the snowpack, we took a look at the water supply situation, we looked at everything that was happening around the state, and our board decided that we needed to take this seriously and take more actions now. When we're thinking about our drought response, we're not just thinking about this year, we're thinking about next year and the year after. We want to be prepared if it's dry. So our board in April declared a stage 2 drought. And they set a mandatory water use reduction goal of 10%. Now, to be clear, that's a community-wide goal. So that doesn't mean we're going to each individual customer and saying, you have to reduce your water use 10%, and you have to reduce it by 10%. Because we know some people are always being really efficient, and we know some folks have a lot more to do. But community-wide, we're trying to get down to a 10% reduction. And the way we do that is through some of our restrictions on water use that I'll talk about in a minute. We also enacted our excessive use penalty ordinance to send a signal to those folks who are using a lot of water. And we are again purchasing supplemental supplies, like I mentioned, those water transfers from other agencies. So in terms of our restrictions that are in place right now, there's a number that have to do with irrigation, which is another reason that it's really great to get rid of your lawn so that you're prepared for droughts like this. We're asking folks not to irrigate more than 3 times a week, only at dawn and dusk. Make sure that you're not irrigating in a way that causes runoff or overspray. And then we also have some restrictions for our commercial customers. And a lot of these are common sense things like, don't use water to like wash down sidewalks and driveways, use a broom instead. Restaurants and bars can only provide water upon request, things like that. So we know that obviously conservation is really important from a water supply perspective, particularly when we're in drought, but just in every year. But I just want to talk briefly about the many other benefits of water conservation before I turn things over to Jolene. We talk about the multi-benefits of conservation. It's things like saving energy. A lot of people don't realize how much energy is involved in getting water to our houses. There was a study done by the Public Policy Institute of California in 2018 that found that about 20% of our electricity in California and 30% of our natural gas was used for pumping, treating, and heating water. So if you're worried about your energy footprint, saving water is a great way to reduce your energy use. Conserving water is also great for habitat. You see these fish here. I mentioned our McComely River is a really important habitat. When you save water, we are able to use that to, help restore and protect the fishery. We've also got some great habitat here in the East Bay around our watersheds that we manage. And getting rid of your lawn has some particular benefits. You can think about it as, building your own habitat, your own ecosystem in your backyard. Particularly if you replace your lawn with native plants, you're really encouraging a local ecosystem. I replaced my lawn, my backyard many years ago, and I'm amazed by how many butterflies we get, how many different species of birds visit, bees. It's really great for the local ecosystem. And again, when you're using typically the types of methods that Jolene's going to be talking about are things that will improve soil health. They'll reduce the use of pesticides and chemicals that can get in our stormwater. So there really are a lot of great benefits to getting rid of your lawn. And Jolene's going to talk a little bit more about how you do that. But before we jump into that, we want to have a quick poll. Mona, can you start the poll for us? We want to find out a little bit about where you are in your lawn conversion journey. So you should see the poll now, and you can choose, whether you're thinking about replacing your lawn, if you're planning to do it, maybe you've already started your project, or maybe you've already done it. Maybe you love your lawn and you're just kind of, you don't want to get rid of it, and maybe we can convince you otherwise. Or maybe you're just here because you're curious. So if everybody could just take a moment to answer that quiz.
We're almost done. Okay, we've got 86 participants. Wait, we're still going. All right, 90%. So I'll stop there and share results.
So this is great. It looks like we got a lot of folks who are thinking about replacing their lawn or planning to do it. And a few folks who already got rid of their lawn and are enjoying the no-mow lifestyle. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jolene, and she's going to tell you how to actually do it.
Yeah, thanks, Alice. And I do appreciate that there were some honest responses on there. Some folks who said that they love their lawns, and you'll see in this presentation that if you do have a lawn that is getting a lot of use, maybe it's being used for kids or pets, or you just love being out on your lawn, that's okay. We can also focus on areas maybe around the border of your yard where you can just reduce the size and still implement some of these sustainable landscaping techniques. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Let's see, did that work? Mona, can you see my screen?
Yes, your screen looks great.
Okay, great. So this, second portion of the presentation is really going to focus heavily on our landscape rebate program and also some of those sustainable landscaping best practices that you'll want to keep in mind when you get started. And I'm starting with our landscape rebates because in that poll, I saw that there were a lot of people who were thinking of doing a lawn conversion project. And I want to just let you know that you can get some money back for those projects, but you'll want to make sure that you get in your rebate application before starting. I can't stress that enough, that we really want to make sure we get a chance to review your project and make sure that you meet all of those requirements. But now is a really great time to apply for a landscape rebate because we just raised those rebate amounts during the drought. So residents can be eligible for a rebate of up to $2,000 and businesses eligible for up to $15,000. So we have our standard lawn conversion rebate. And like I said, we just raised the rebate amount, so pretty exciting. It's $1.25 per square foot. And this requires low water plants, at least 50% plant coverage in your landscape. And then your new landscape can only be watered on drip irrigation or hand watering. And you must utilize mulch to cover the surface and keep in moisture. So for those of you who may be new to landscaping, when I say drip irrigation, what I'm referring to are it's tubing with emitters in it, and those emitters are placed near the base of your plant to deliver water. So it's considered a much more efficient way to water your plants than a sprinkler system, where there can be a lot of overspray and runoff. And then when I talk about mulch, what I'm referring to is really any material that is spread or laid over the surface of the soil. It's usually going to be an organic material like bark or wood chips. And then right now we are piloting our super rebate, the super lawn conversion rebate, which is an additional rebate amount. It's $250 per square foot. And the super rebate requires all of the same items as that standard rebate that I mentioned, but it's designed to, again, promote those sustainable landscaping principles and best practices, which is going to include planting a majority of California native plants to provide habitat for local pollinators, planting in the cool season, which is September through February. And that is so that you can take advantage of the winter rains to hopefully get your plants established. Whereas if you were to plant during those hot summer months, you would have to be watering a lot more. And then applying compost, which is going to help build healthy soil, and then sheet mulching as a method to remove your lawn. And I'll get into the sheet mulching steps a little later on in this presentation. And then we have a whole group of irrigation rebates. So if there's an area, maybe bushes or other plants that are, so it's not a lawn and it's on a sprinkler system, but you want to convert it to drip irrigation, you can get a rebate of 25 cents per square foot for that landscaped area. And then if there's an area, maybe for those of you who might be keeping some portion of your lawn where you do have sprinklers, we offer a rebate for switching out those nozzles to high efficiency sprinkler nozzles. Those are going to be nozzles, those high efficiency sprinkler nozzles, they typically have more even coverage of water and the drops are actually heavier. So it prevents water loss from misting and the wind. So that's definitely something to consider. And then we have rebates for self-adjusting irrigation controllers. Those are sometimes called smart irrigation controllers, and they use local weather-based information to adjust watering times based on your plant needs. So those are great because they will automatically turn off if it's raining, or if it rains just a little bit but barely wets the soil. Those smart irrigation controllers will adjust watering times to make sure that your plants are still getting the water that they need. And then we also have rebates for pressure regulators and irrigation submeters. I'm not going to go into those much. We typically see those for really large landscapes or commercial properties. So the rebate process, it starts with reviewing eligibility requirements and downloading the application. I have the website listed up here, ebmud.com/rebates. Oh, and I should also just mention, you don't have to worry about frantically, copying down these links. We will send out a follow-up email afterwards to everybody who's registered for this webinar and include all the links mentioned today. And then I do have a colleague who is pasting those links into the Q&A box as well. So if you want to check it out right now, you can look for those links there. So you'll want to download the application and then go ahead. And again, I can't stress enough, please submit that to us before starting your project. And then we'll go ahead and review it and send you a pre-approval email. And then from that point on, you'll have a 6-month deadline for completing your project. And then once you complete it, if you need an extension, you can let us know, but you'll go ahead and let us know it's completed. And we may ask for things like photos, or we'll want to set up some type of a post-completion inspection that may look like maybe we'll set up a virtual appointment with you, a video chat, or for some of those landscapes, we may come out for an in-person inspection. And then after that inspection, you'll get your rebate. It's issued as a credit onto your water bill. So if the only exception here to needing to get pre-approval from us is if you are getting a rebate for that smart irrigation controller. If you've already purchased it, if it's within 90 days, you can still go ahead and apply for that rebate amount. Okay, so just a reminder, because I know there's a lot there related to our lawn conversion program, just a final checklist of things to keep in mind is that this rebate is for previously irrigated lawns. So if it's if you turned off water during the drought, that's okay, but the rebate is for a lawn, so that means that weed patches or dirt lots won't qualify. And then again, you'll need to get that pre-approval. You need to make sure that 50% of the area has plants in it that are all designated as low or very low water use plants. Make sure there's at least 3 inches of mulch. No synthetic weed cloths. We want to make sure that any weed barrier put down is going to be biodegradable. And then no impermeable hardscape either. If you are putting in hardscape like pavers, there needs to be space between them to allow water to soak down into the soil. And then your new water efficient landscape needs to be irrigated with drip irrigation or hand watering. Whew, okay, I think I got through all of that. So let's see, we get some eye candy here, see what some of these projects look like. We actually had a photo contest a few years ago, and we just relaunched the photo contest. I'll do a pitch for that at the end. But we asked people to submit before and after photos showing off a wide variety of water efficient landscapes. And these were a few of the standout projects. So you can see on this picture, this is a very common site around the East Bay. It's a patchy lawn where they had shut off the water. And then the after looks like that. So a really big transformation. This new one has lots of color, lots of dimensions, lots of texture. So really showing that low water gardens, are anything but boring. Here is a before one where it's a well irrigated green lawn, and then the after one, it's really looks like the hillsides where you might go on a hike. And when we did this photo contest, one of the award categories was for most in harmony with nature, and this was definitely the winner. Going to be bringing in a lot of pollinators for sure. And then really wanted to show that these low water landscapes are great for all sizes. This is a small front yard. And a big transformation with mulch and mounding, and just a lot of variety of different plants right there. And so, a common question that comes up is how much water is my new landscape going to be using compared to a lawn, especially how much water am I going to be saving? And really the answer is going to vary a lot based on size of your yard, your microclimates, irrigation type, and plant material. But we teamed up with Stop Waste. They're the Alameda County Waste Management Authority to create a water savings calculator that gives you an estimate of what water use for your landscape might look like. And to use the calculator, you first select your city, and then you input the square footage of your lawn. I have an example here where I chose Oakland, and then the lawn area to be converted, 1,000 square feet. And then based on what we know about lawns and the typical water use based on a sprinkler system, you can see that this size lawn is estimated to use over 32,000 gallons of water a year. So that's a lawn. And then this calculator also allows me to look at what the water savings might be for my new landscape. So from here, I would select my new landscape type. In this example, I chose, right here, ground cover, the planting area, and then is the ground cover I'm putting in, is it considered a low, moderate, or high water use ground cover? And then what is my irrigation? So I selected drip for these, and then it calculates, again, based on what we know for those water needs of these plants, it calculates the new annual water use. And then down here I marked, I was actually going to be sheet mulching my landscape. And sheet mulching will save additional water because the mulch is actually going to be holding in a lot of water. It's going to be slowing down that evaporation process. And you can see in my results here, when compared to a lawn, my new water efficient design is saving a significant amount of water. And that's why we have these webinars, and why we do these landscape rebates, is because especially in a drought, but also even in non-drought years, if you were to make the change from a lawn to a water efficient landscape, those water savings go a long way in helping us meet those conservation goals. And then once you make the change, you'll just continue to see that low water use throughout the years. So hope you are now sold on the idea. And I keep mentioning sheet mulching. It's come up a couple of times now, and that's really because it is the foundation of a water efficient landscape. So I'm going to just kind of briefly here touch on sheet mulching and what that might look like, those different steps. But if you want to learn more about sheet mulching, we actually have a recorded webinar all about tips and tricks and troubleshooting, and that can be found on EBMUD's YouTube channel, where we have a lot of those webinars recorded from the last couple of years when we transitioned to virtual learning. So we have webinars on sheet mulching, garden maintenance, specifically on leak detection and irrigation. So we'll be sending out a link there for additional learning resources. So for sheet mulching, again, it's really the foundation of a water-wise garden. It's going to save you time, money, and water when compared to a lawn. It helps build healthy soil. It creates attractive, climate-appropriate gardens. It eliminates the need for killing your grass with weed killer. And it's going to really enhance the soil structure and improve water retention in the soil. That's why it's required for EBMUD's super rebate amount. The alternative to sheet mulching is that you might actually have your lawn dug out. And what a lot of folks don't realize is that if you're actually digging out and removing the lawn, even if it goes into your curbside green bin, that sod cannot be composted in a commercial composting facility. The sod actually gets stuck in the commercial composting equipment, so it will get sorted out and just end up in the landfill. So that's why sheet mulching is considered a much less wasteful practice. And sheet mulching can be kind of intimidating, but I've broken it down here into some simple steps to show that you can really do it yourself or have a sheet mulching party with your friends and family. And if you were just to go online and search for sheet mulching, you might see some different recipes come up. So the one I chose here is, I think, one of the most common ones, but essentially you are just creating layers where you're using cardboard, compost, and mulch. And even if they vary a little, you really can't go wrong with that combo. So the first step, crucial for the success of the project, is to prepare the site. And this is probably the most time-consuming part, where first you need to knock down or mow your existing vegetation one last time so that everything lies flat. You'll want to go around and flag your sprinkler heads so you know where they are and so they don't get lost underneath the mulch. And then you'll need to do what's called edging, where you're actually going to be digging down about 3 inches past any hardscape and then digging out about 8 to 12 inches, creating a sort of moat that prevents grass and weeds from popping up near the edge. And then because you're going to be creating these layers on top of your landscape, you'll actually tuck all that down into your edged area. It'll all kind of slope slightly down towards your hardscape so that everything's not blowing over onto that hardscaped area. And then with that edging, with that soil that you remove, you can actually just flip it over and make some mounds with that sod, because a lot of plants actually love mounds for extra drainage. Oops. Okay, then the second step is if you have any of those big 5-gallon or larger plants, you'll go ahead and get those in the ground. To do so, you start by digging a hole, roughing up the root ball, and then partially backfilling the hole with soil mixed with compost for optimum plant health. And then step 3 is creating your weed barrier. And this part is super important because if you don't have a solid weed barrier or full coverage, you'll start getting lawn and weeds popping up in your project. So the weed barrier is the cardboard. And in this picture, you can see people just collected cardboard boxes. You just want to make sure that you're going to be overlapping all of the cardboard boxes by about 6 to 8 inches. And then putting down, you can actually, some nurseries sell rolls of recycled cardboard, so you can purchase that as well. But again, you'll want to make sure you have full coverage and at least those 2 layers. And then you can even wet the cardboard and that will start the decomposition process. And then step 4 is the compost and mulch layer. So we have this layer of cardboard down, and then on top of that, you're going to do another layer of about 1 to 2 inches of compost. And then on top of that, your final layer is about at least 3 inches of mulch. And if your main goal is just weed suppression, then you can skip the compost and just add mulch there. But it's really those layers that work together to compost your lawn in place and suppress all of the weeds and the lawn, blocks out the sun, kills the lawn, and gets it ready for planting. And then you can actually plant right away into your project. You don't have to wait until the lawn has been killed off. You'll just have to be diligent where you plant to go in and hand pick any weeds or grass that are popping up. So to plant, you start by cutting a hole straight into your cardboard. I've seen people at some of our sheet mulching workshops. A good way to do this is to just cut an X into the cardboard and peel back some of those layers. And then you can just go ahead and plant right in it. And for planting, you dig a hole about as deep as the root ball, about 3 times as wide. And then when you are mulching around your plant, you just want to be careful not to mulch right up so that you don't want to suffocate your plant right up to the stem. You want to make sure you're leaving a little bit of space for those plants to breathe. And then when you are planting your garden, you want to keep in mind hydrozoning. So especially if you're going to be planting right away. So hydrozoning is really just a concept where you're grouping your plants with similar water needs so that you can put them on the same irrigation zone or valve. And if you're doing this project yourself, that can be as simple as taking a picture of your yard and looking at your microclimates. So where do you get a lot of sun? Where do you have shade? Where are you going to be putting your maybe high water plants? Where are you grouping those low water plants? And that's so that you can set up a customized irrigation schedule, because what you don't want is for everything to be watered the same amount, because then your high water plants are probably not going to be getting enough water. Your low water plants are going to be getting way too much water. You want to make sure it's going to be custom based on those plant water needs. And so in this picture, you can see we just grouped over here. Okay, this is my very low water plants. Here's low water in full sun. Here I have some moderate high water use plants that are in pots. So I want to make sure those are watered separately. So just something to keep in mind as you're planning out your garden. And then other things to consider with your irrigation is, again, for these landscapes where you're going to be converting your overhead spray to drip irrigation. Again, that's the tubes with the emitters in it. You can see in this picture, there's a big roll up of some of that tubing. And some nurseries and irrigation centers actually sell drip conversion kits where you can start with one of those sprinkler heads and actually convert it to drip pretty easily that way, just capping off the unused spray heads. And then typically with sheet mulching, your drip is going to go under the mulch layer to protect the tubing from the sun and reduce water loss. So things to keep in mind as you're planning this out. And then with mulching, especially mulching around trees, just a reminder that you don't want to mulch, right up to the base of the tree. You do want to leave a little bit of space because that mulch is going to be holding in water and you don't want it to cause any diseases. So this is instead what you want to do, making sure you're leaving some space from the trunk of that tree. It's just it's a common mistake we see, which is why I slip it into these presentations. And then East Bay Mud, as well as Contra Costa Water District, we've teamed up with some local nurseries to provide mulch coupons. So if you go to our website, and again, we'll make sure to share that link, you can find coupons for bags or bulk purchases of mulch. Because mulch really is one of those magic items considered a gardener's best friend. And then I'm just going to really briefly touch on some plant resources, because there's so many great resources about plants out there now for you to help with planning your garden. We do have our plant book. It's a beloved favorite. It's Plants and Landscapes for Summer Dry Climates. It's for purchase on our website, and any plant in that book will qualify for our landscape rebates. We also on our website have a low water use plant list. That's our list of our top 100 go-to low water plants. It's a mix of, some of them are California native plants. So some of them are also just considered Mediterranean plants that do well in this climate. There's the WUCALS database. That's the Water Use Classification of Landscape Species database. I think I have an example slide on that one next that I'll show. And then CNPS stands for the California Native Plant Society. And they have two great resources I wanted to refer folks to. One is their CalScape Garden Planner. It's a great tool where you just answer some basic questions about your yard. You'll choose your city, your microclimates, and your design style. And then they'll come up with a custom list of plants for you and also show you which nurseries you can purchase those from. And then they also have their Bloom campaign. You might go to some nurseries and see a big banner that says Bloom on it, showing their native plant area. The Bloom campaign is 11 favorite plants that do well in this area, and the California Native Plant Society has worked with nurseries to make sure those plants will be well stocked. And then really a great resource is just to go to your local nursery. Most of them do now have drought tolerant areas, and they're going to be really your best resource for knowing which plants will do well in this area. This is the resource I mentioned, the Water Use Classification of Landscape Species website. And this is one that we use when we're reviewing our landscape rebate applications. If we see a plant list and we're unsure, what is that plant? We can look it up here and see, based on what city you live in, if it's considered very low, moderate, or a high water use plant. So this is available for you as well as a tool if you have a favorite plant in mind and you're not sure about its water needs. You can search here. And then we get a lot of questions about hiring landscape contractors. And I want to refer people to these different directories where anyone who's been through these trainings will be well-versed and qualified for putting in a water-wise landscape. So Rescape California offers a training for landscape professionals. So does the Irrigation Association. So does WaterSense. And then there's another training called the Qualified Water Efficient Landscaper Training. And on each of these websites, there is a directory where you can search to see who has been who has been trained in these certain areas and find people who work in your different cities. So that's kind of your best bet for finding professionals who are going to be versed in our program and specialize in water efficient landscapes. And then just want to remind folks on this webinar that if you are an EBMUD customer and you have an account number, you can view your home water report portal. It's a website where you can pay your bill, view your water use, and find water conservation recommendations all in one place. I really like it because you can view your historic water use. So you can actually go back to maybe last year and see every time you get your bill how it's tracking. And it can show you, is your water use going way up in the summer months? If so, that's likely because of your landscape irrigation. And then on the water report portal, you can also set up leak alerts so that if your bill suddenly spikes, you can be notified right away. And then it's convenient because you can check out your water use on your phone or on a tablet. And then I mentioned that we have relaunched our before and after photo contest. This is the I Heart My Garden Photo Challenge. It actually just relaunched on Monday. So if anybody on here has finished a project and wants to submit some photos to help inspire others, now's a good time to collect those inspirational photos, since we are asking more folks to start planting in the fall and winter months. And so for this year's contest, we'll be choosing winners for most inspiring DIY design, most colorful, most dramatic change, and also looking for photo submissions from HOAs and businesses. And so you can actually, I mean, we only have a couple submissions right now because we just launched, but you can go to the gallery and vote on your favorites. And then there will be a grand prize for the submission that gets the most votes. And the deadline to submit is September 25th. And then I know Alice and I both went through things really fast. I want to make sure we have plenty of time to get to questions. But if you're starting a project or you have some really specific questions, we do have our landscape rebate office hours. So these are bi-weekly on Tuesdays, offered at noon and in the evening from 5 to 6. And these are great because it's not a webinar. It's really more like a meeting format where we'll ask you if you can be unmuted, you can show your video if you're comfortable with that, and really just ask questions in a small group setting and hear from each other. They've been, I think, really helpful in breaking down the rebate process, and also just fun to hear from people in a way where, we're just going to be reading your Q&As from that you've submitted, that you typed out, but we love to hear from people about your actual experiences out there with these projects. And then we have a special upcoming office hour just on smart irrigation controllers on August 24th, again offered at noon and then in the evening at 5. So for that one, because controllers can be a little tricky, if you have questions about how to set up a schedule or how to utilize different zones, maybe how to hydrozone, like I had mentioned earlier, you can definitely bring us those questions, and one of our irrigation experts will be on hand. So just kind of to summarize things, EBMUD's water supply relies on snowmelt and the McCallamy River, and we heard from Alice at the beginning that precipitation is below average, and EBMUD is in a severe stage 2 drought with those mandatory water use restrictions in effect. So to help out our customers, including residents and businesses, EBMUD offers lawn conversion and irrigation equipment rebates, where you can really save a significant amount of water outdoor in your landscape. Sheet mulching is the foundation for a water-wise garden. If you have any questions about that, I hope you'll ask today or follow up in one of our office hours. And then we have so many plant and design resources on our website. We'll be sending out those links. And then anybody with an EBMUD account is also reminded to go online where you can track your water use at your home water report portal. All right, we have a good amount of time here at the end. I'm hoping we can get to some of your questions. And I think Mona was going to be reading some of those to us. And this can be about any of the topics I mentioned, or we can go back to the beginning if you have questions for Alice about the water supply or any of those mandatory water use restrictions.
Alice, do you want to ask, or do you want me to do it?
I can ask, since we've been kind of trying to keep track of some of them. So Jolene, we got a lot of questions about the use of sheet mulching and just concerns about like sort of fire escaping and just the fact that, we are in these extended fire seasons right now. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you. That is something to definitely keep in mind. And we do defer to local fire departments if they have specific restrictions. You'll definitely want to check with your city or county. EBMUD has a great booklet all about fire escaping, and it really focuses on vegetation management and reducing what's called that fuel ladder. So making sure you don't have plants that are growing right up next to your home that could catch on fire. As far as mulch goes, we've been doing a lot of research, and it really seems like there's different types of mulch, some that may be more flammable than others. And our research has been showing that there's a type of mulch called composted mulch, where it's already started to go through this composting process. It's going to be usually a bit finer in grain, and that one is considered much less fire prone. And that mulch can actually hold in moisture and can be beneficial in that regard. But do want to make sure, again, that folks refer to any of your local fire departments or your city or county restrictions. There may be restrictions about what can be planted right up next to your house, in which case that might be a good spot for putting rocks, which is considered a type of mulch as well.
Great, thank you. So we had another question here about it. Has there been any benefit in home value with making the change to a garden? And is there any idea of the upkeep costs for, doing a water smart garden versus turning on the sprinklers and mowing every couple weeks?
Oh, I'm not aware of any studies that have shown an impact on home value, but I would love to see somebody take up that research. Alice, are you aware of anything?
Yeah, well, I don't know of any research specifically. I will say, because we did a project just like that several years ago. I mean, I think a lot of times when you're talking about home value, it really depends on what was there before and what you put in after. And you'll see when you go to our website and look through some of these pictures. I mean, people do some amazing, gorgeous gardens that really liven up this space, and in a lot of cases are just a lot more interesting visually than lawns. In terms of the upkeep costs, generally, our experience is that a lot of these types of projects have less upkeep involved. You're talking about maybe a few times a year doing some kind of like trimming, every few years maybe having to put additional mulch down, as opposed to having to constantly go out and mow and adjust your sprinklers. And in terms of adjusting the sprinklers, like Jolene mentioned, we do really encourage smart irrigation controllers that just take the guesswork out of it and control the system for you. So another question, there were a few folks, Jolene, who were asking about the super rebate and whether that $2,000 cap still applies.
Yes, so we raised the rebate amount per square foot, but the cap amount does still apply, and that's on a 2-year rolling basis. So if you max out on your front yard, and 2 years later, if we still have the program, I mean, there's no guarantee, but you could apply again at that time.
Great. Okay. Let me see. I'm just going through the questions here. Somebody said they're interested in growing edible plants like vegetables, fruits, fruit trees. Would these types of plants be considered low water users?
They might not be considered low water use, but we do allow for edible plants in our rebate program, because I mean, somebody's going to be using water somewhere to grow them. And edible plants thrive with, but also only the standard rebate for that one. But edible plants also do really well with drip irrigation, because the water is going to be delivered right to their root zone. Drip irrigation is applied a lot slower than sprinklers, so it encourages deeper roots. It also isn't just going to wash out all of the nutrients. So yeah, we've seen some really great edible gardens thrive. I love when I see maybe some raised beds, but then surrounded by plants that bring in pollinators. That's really like a win-win and good mix.
Fantastic. And I'm just going to say that we've got these amazing gold, like the little, summer gold cherry tomatoes in our backyard right now. They're so delicious. You can just eat them like candy. So I highly recommend that. Okay, here's another great question. Somebody says, we did sheet mulching about 7 years ago and weeds have come back, especially with the rains early this year. Do we need to sheet mulch again?
Yes, you will need to sheet mulch again, but that's okay. You can actually just sheet mulch right on top of everything. And that is common, because the whole sheet mulching process is designed so that over time that cardboard is going to break down. And that's why cardboard is chosen as that weed barrier. Plastic never breaks down. And so most landscape fabrics, it can be a little confusing figuring out what the material is, but most of them are still made of a plastic composite, and it'll just never break down. Over time, it just breaks down into tiny little pieces and never really goes away. But the cardboard will break down. It will actually add to your soil health, but you do need to, especially after 7 years, you may need to go back and re-sheet mulch. Again, the cardboard layer is very important to block out the sun and kill everything, or kill the grass and weeds. And then you can just keep building up your layers on top of that. And also because over time, all your layers are going to decompress anyways, as everything breaks down.
Great, thank you. So one question I can maybe answer, we've got a lot of questions here about, our thoughts on artificial grass and whether artificial turf qualifies. So we do not actually cover artificial turf as part of our rebate program. And that's just because there's a lot of environmental issues associated with it. There's like a huge disposal issue because it tends to just go in the landfill. It's not great for soil health. So yeah, we don't currently rebate that with our program. Okay, let's see. We had a question here about any resources for determining the time and drip nozzle setup for a new system. So, for example, any just suggestions on how to set up a drip irrigation system or layout examples?
Yeah, actually, there's several different layout options, and it's another one of our handouts we have, and it's online as well. A common layout is a grid. It depends how heavily you're planting. And there's also drip rings. That one's pretty common as well. As far as watering times, it is going to vary based on your type of irrigation, whether or not you have inline drip irrigation, that's where the emitters are in the tubes, or if you have sometimes called micro sprayers where it's outside the tubing. Another great resource we have is a recommended watering schedule where we break it up based on those different types of irrigation and show based on the month how many days per week we recommend watering. We recommend, even with drip irrigation, we do recommend setting up an irrigation schedule where it's called cycle and soak, which is where you are going to have your irrigation come on for, say, 10 minutes and then wait an hour, and then have it come back on for 10 more minutes, wait an hour, and then come back on. And doing that really allows the water to soak into your soil. With drip irrigation, and especially these low water plants, California natives, we're typically recommending you water deeper and longer, but for less often. But I know it can be really intimidating just getting started with setting up drip irrigation. I do recommend those spray to drip conversion kits. And we're lucky in the East Bay area that we have some great irrigation centers nearby as well, where the experts will really be there and can talk to you about their different products.
Great, thank you. So here's a quick question. Alameda has restarted the Recycle Water program. Does EBMUD have such a program? So we do have a Recycle Water program. It's mostly geared towards, the purple pipe that you see in the street. So providing some amount of water for landscaping, golf courses, and then we also have a couple of Recycle Water projects that provide water for industrial uses. We don't currently have a program where people can pick up recycled water for residential use, but that is something that we've looked into. I also just want to say we've gotten a lot of questions asking about, if we have lists of landscape contractors, and then also a lot of questions about the costs of these different projects. Unfortunately, it's hard to give a cost per square foot because it really varies so much depending what you do and whether you hire somebody to do it or you do it yourself. One thing I did just want to put a little teaser out there for is we are working on developing a new program. This would be a design assistance program. We're hoping we can launch it later this winter, and that would provide a rebate for folks to work with qualified landscapers just to put together a preliminary plan and plant list. So we're hoping that if we can get that resource out there, it makes it a little bit easier for folks to take that first step. Because like Jolene said, I know it can be a little intimidating when you're getting started and just trying to figure out what you want to do. All right. All right, let me just take a quick look through here. Here's somebody who says, our street has very old, large trees that lose millions of leaves. Would they just stay on the lawn and be considered mulch? I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of, support for just, I don't know that that's necessarily going to be mulch per se, but there is a lot of great reasons if you do have trees to just let the leaves fall, and if possible not collect, you know, the leaf detritus. It's great for insects, birds. It provides habitat. So that's a great question. Oh, here's a good one. We stopped watering our lawn some years ago. Now the gophers and voles have moved in. Will converting our lawn address that, or is the conversion doomed to failure? Jolene, any thoughts about voles?
Oh,
Gophers?
I know that they can be a real challenge. I've spoken with people who've had a lot of success putting in kind of underground cages around their plants, but you will still likely have that same issue with your sheet mulched area too.
All right, thanks. Okay, here is one. I had my yard installed last year, and the landscapers didn't do a good job of zoning the plants based on water usage and sun versus shade. And I think there are holes in the drip lines where plants aren't placed. What would be the best approach to correcting this problem, and who would be the best person to correct it? Is that a sprinkler person, a landscaper, a contractor? How do we find these people?
Sorry, was the question about the irrigation? Maybe
Yeah,
having some
it
leak?
sounds like their lawn replacement project wasn't hydrozoned very well. And there's issues with the
Oh.
drip irrigation system, so they're trying to figure out how to fix that.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. I would recommend first starting off by kind of conducting your own irrigation audit, especially if you worked with a professional and you weren't quite sure where the irrigation was located. And to do so, most irrigation controllers do have a setup where you can run each station just for a few minutes at a time. So you can run your irrigation station and then actually go out into your landscape and just visually look and see what is being watered. And this is what we do as well when we conduct in-person irrigation assessments, is looking for puddles, looking for any blocked emitters, looking for dead plants. So I think the place to start would really be identifying those issues so that you can really discuss this with a professional and make sure that whoever you hire really understands the problems and can offer you some solutions. And through those directories that I had mentioned, the qualified water efficient landscaping professionals, they've all been well versed in irrigation and should be quite knowledgeable in helping you come up with a better irrigation and design.
Great, thanks, Jolene. I think we're running close on time, so we might not be able to get to everybody's questions live today, but we can maybe handle just a couple more. So here's one. I've been looking on the internet to get info on how to make a weed-free garden. I decided against weed cloth because of the water not getting through it, so decided in favor of cardboard. Then I read that I should put wood chips from tree cutters on top. How do wood chips compare with compost?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love that you've already gotten a head start on the research. So yeah, you also a really great point in that question about another reason why we don't recommend those weed cloths is, again, most of them are actually kind of plastic material and might not let water soak through. So using cardboard is great. And then wood chips are really, it's just a different type of mulch. And I know people have had a lot of success by contacting local arborists who might be doing some chipping in your neighborhood, and they're going to have to pay to have that disposed of at a compost facility. So usually they're more than happy to drop off wood chips. You just want to make sure you're careful about what kind of wood chips you're getting. Eucalyptus wood chips, for example, have oils in them and might not be great for certain plants. But yeah, you can definitely just use wood chips as your mulch. It might not look quite as fancy and uniform as some mulch you might be purchasing, but it's a great cost-effective DIY solution.
Great, fantastic. Let me see here. Real quick, here's somebody who says, I use a soaker hose to deep water 40-foot high coastal redwoods. I run it for about 1 hour per week. Is this encouraged? Jolene, do you want to talk a little bit about trees?
Yeah, I'm glad that question's been brought up because we absolutely do not want trees to be dying during the drought. And a big issue is that oftentimes trees are just irrigated as part of the lawn and you might not even realize it. So the tree is just getting the same water applied through those sprinklers. So once you turn off your sprinklers or go to convert your lawn, those trees that were receiving water could start dying off. But trees provide, such important services. They're capturing carbon, they're providing shade, they're providing habitat. So we definitely don't want trees to be dying during the drought. And using a soaker hose is a great solution. Putting a soaker hose around your tree at the drip line, that's where the canopy is going to be. If you were to draw a line down, that is really a great way to keep your trees alive. And we do recommend deep watering, but less frequently. And we would, for a tree, recommend a deep watering, maybe even just once a month. But you'll want to keep an eye on your tree. Different trees have different needs, and see what's working for it.
Okay, and I think we're going to do one last question here, and I apologize to everybody who we didn't get a chance to answer, but certainly a lot of these questions you can come to our office hours that Jolene mentioned, and we can try to get into some of the more specific questions. But somebody asked here about doing multiple projects, like basically, let me see if I can find the question. I think the question was, can they do a lawn replacement on sort of one side of their lawn, and then come back and come back at a later date and do a project for a different part of their lawn?
Yeah, absolutely. And that if that's what works best for you, then that's a great way to approach it, especially because some of these projects can be a lot more, time consuming than you might expect. And yeah, you can definitely come back and apply for, as long as you're under that maximum amount within that 2-year period, you can come back and apply for a rebate at a later time.
Great. Thanks so much. Mona, do you want to say any few last words before we close things out for the evening?
Sure. And Geneva, I'm going to ask you to stop sharing so I can share my slide to, yes, I'm going to do that. I just wanted to share with you our next Water Wednesday, which will be on September 21st. And it will be firefight, field management in the age of climate change. We get this question a lot. And how are we managing the climate change, the dead trees, on and on. It will be very compelling. I hope you'll join us. And I want to thank everyone for joining us for tonight's Water Wednesday. It was great. The video will be up on EBMUD's YouTube site by the end of the week. And we will also post Jolene and Alice's PowerPoints on our webpage at ebmud.com/Water Wednesday. And thank you all for joining us.
Thanks so much, everyone. And we really appreciate your help saving water. And we hope to see your application for a lawn rebate soon.
Yeah. Thank
Good
you.
night.